Welcome back. Today I'm going to try to solve some chess puzzles on chess.com. If you're new here, I'm not a titled player. I'm not an expert of any kind when it comes to chess. I'm just a random middle-aged person trying to improve. And I know that my chances are lower than some people because of my age. I turned 50 last year and I'm just trying to do my best to keep my mind active. Hopefully some of that will show up here, that I've actually done some work. I will try to talk through my thought processes aloud for the benefit of anybody watching. If you notice something that I miss or explain something that I didn't understand, which is likely to happen, feel free to leave a comment and help me out. Or ask a question if you're not sure of something, and I'll do my best to answer it. Let's just click on puzzles and go. We've become aware over the last several videos that chess.com has an ongoing glitch where I won't get points counted for the first puzzle if I get it right. If I get it wrong, it will deduct those points from my score, which is a little bit not fair. But we're learning to ignore it, so if that happens, I'm just going to breeze right past it. I am playing with the black pieces. My opponent has sounded like they took a rook here maybe, and they're aiming for check. Do I have something? I have check here on e3. Checks has got to be the first thing that we look for, especially in situations where it looks like I'm about to lose a piece. If I take here, they're going to take back. I'm positive, and I can get out of check, and so on. So I think I have to do something quick, and checking here looks like a really good option. The problem looks like they can just get out of check. But if they get out of check there on b2, I can take the rook, and that comes with check, which I think would require them to take back. But then what would I have? Then I would check here. So maybe that's not the best check. Maybe this is the best check right now. Knight to e2. That is, of course, a fork of the king and the queen. They would have to respond in some way. I don't know if they would come out to d2 or to b2, or I guess they could come over, but they do have to move their king because none of their pieces could capture my knight on e2. If they come out to d2, I could take their rook, then with check, and they couldn't take my knight because it's protected by the queen. They would have to get out of check, I guess, one way or the other, and then I would take their queen. If I check here and they go to one of those squares over on the b file, I think then I would take their queen, and of course if they checked me, I would take the rook. So I'm going to try to check with the knight on e2. That's got to be the best option at this point. But if it's wrong, we'll find out why on the analysis board. Okay, that was right, and they went that way. Again, if they had come to d2, I would have taken their rook with check, but they didn't. The computer, of course, saw that coming. It's got to be my best move to take their queen, because the only follow-up check that I have is to go back where I was on c3. And in that case, of course, the king could come up or come over. If it went back to c1, I would have a repetition going. It's got to be my best move to take the queen. I don't think they can mate me at this point. Again, if they take the rook, I can take back. I don't know what else they would have. I might be overthinking it, but I'm going to take the queen. Okay, they did take my rook. I don't think anything else makes sense other than this. Okay. I'm also working on not getting distracted by the themes there on the right column. Sometimes the themes are correct. Sometimes they're not correct. Sometimes there's not a theme, but I'm, again, practicing not looking at that. I'm also not going to check whether those points were counted. But I am going to take down the number of this puzzle just in case it's not in my archive, because I like to link to the puzzles that I solve in this video in the description for those of you who like to work on the same puzzles. So give me a moment for that. Okay, I have recorded the serial number for that puzzle, and we're just going to move on. Okay, again, from the sound, it sounded like my opponent has taken something, perhaps a pawn, perhaps my other piece. I have a battery lined up against their king here. Or should I say on the file right beside their king. So I do have a check. The king wouldn't be able to come forward because my pawn guards that square. Obviously wouldn't be able to go over because of the rook. So it would have to, if I did check, and I think that's my only check in this position, none of their pieces are guarding that square other than the king. So the king would have two choices to get out of check. If it went to g8, I could follow with my queen, which would threaten a queen trade here. I think they would take it, and then I could pop back and we would trade queens, but I don't think that would help anybody. So I think if I check, no matter which one of those squares they went to, I could follow up check on e8, but they have two pieces guarding that square. So if they took then with the rook, and I took with my queen, and they would take with their queen, and I would take with my queen, and we would each have a rook left. So there may be something else here that I'm not seeing. If my c-pawn wasn't in the way, I would have a check over here on a2, but even if I didn't have the c-pawn and I checked there, I think they could just slide their rook over to block that, so that wouldn't be great. So is there anything better for a first move than this check? Can I threaten anything? I can threaten their queen. Is that what I should do first in order to get the queen to stop guarding e8? I wonder about that. What if I threatened the queen first? Where does it go? I think if it goes anywhere that's not protecting e8, I'll end up winning a piece. Or maybe checkmating. Rook to e6 threatens the queen. The only way that it can continue protecting e8, it can protect e8 by taking this pawn, and it can still be pointed there. At first I was thinking the only way it could protect e8 was to move to d7, and after I had played here, but then I would check, and then I would win the queen for a rook. But that's not the case. If I threaten the queen first, it can take this pawn and still be guarding e8. Then I could check again, and again force the king to the back rank, but when I went up there, the queen would still be guarding that, so I think the check has to be the first move. But once the king moves, then what? I'm not seeing a favorable outcome here, which tells me that I'm missing something, and I've just edited out a long section probably of what I just sat here and stared at the board quietly, trying to figure out what I might be missing. Now, the only things that I can see that I might be missing, for one thing, this rook is undefended, so I guess I could threaten the rook perhaps by doing something like this, but then again, they can just take this pawn, but then I would still have the check, and then my queen would be aiming down this way. So what if I threaten the rook first? Where does it go, besides taking the pawn? It could move over one, and it would be protected by its own pawn. And then I wouldn't have the rook check down the e-file, and I would have this check, but their queen's guarding that square, as is their king. And yes, I would have a pawn guarding that square, but their queen takes first, then the pawn takes, then they get my pawn, and they'll end up with a passed pawn on the h-file, in addition to the ones they're about to have over here when they clean off of these pawns. So instead of wasting any more time, not wasting time, but you know, I only have so much time a day I can spend on these. I'm going to check first. That might be wrong. We'll figure out why. Sometimes I get the first move right, and then I see something that I didn't see before. That might happen, or the first move might be wrong. Okay, the first move was correct. Now, this thing I saw earlier here is still in play, isn't it? The reason it didn't work as the first move is because the rook could then block my rooks from going down the e-file, but my rook's already down the e-file. If I move my queen to b2, threatening their undefended rook, my two rooks are still defending each other. If their rook moves to e4 to be protected by its pawn, then I have mate. So I'm not just threatening the rook, I'm threatening mate. What can they do about that? They could move to protect the rook on d6, but then they're not guarding e8 anymore. Oh, but then I don't have my queen guarding e8 anymore. The reason I'm looking at that is because I really would like my queen to be on g7, and I think that does it. But if I play queen to b2, again, if they just move the rook aside or backward or forward to get out of that, then I have mate on g8 or g7. So I don't think they would play that. Actually, I would have mate on either one of those squares, h8 or g7, because the front rook would be protected, unless they moved it here. Then I would definitely have to go to g7, not h8, because the other rook then would be blocked from being protected. So queen to b2, they won't move the rook here or here because then I would have mate. They won't move the rook forward or backward in any direction because I would have mate. But they could move the queen to protect the rook. Here, d6. Okay, what if they then play queen to d6? Then if I check, they take, and if I take, they take with the king, and then I don't have a follow-up. So maybe that's not the best plan here then. If I go here now, I assume they'll take. If I take back, they'll take with the queen. Then if I take with the rook, they'll take that too. And then I will be left rookless and queenless, and they'll have one rook left. So that's not good. And in fact, if I had thought that all the way through, I wouldn't have probably played this check. Okay, so I am not yet seeing what the follow-up is, because it's not that, because they have 3 pieces defending that square, and I only have 2 attackers on that after I move the rook there. So there's something else here. What about this? Okay, that's better than b2. Okay, because b2 requires them moving the rook for me to get down here. Okay, queen to e5 aims at mate and threatens the rook. This one only did one of those. b2, queen to b2 only threatened the rook. And then if the rook moved, then I was threatening mate. But this threatens mate and the rook. Can they stop mate? I don't think they can. I think it's queen to e5. What resources, if any, would they have then? Because my battery's still lined up. I mean, they can't block it now because that's mate. Can they get any piece over there? They could move this queen here, but then I would just take it. Okay, I'm going to play queen to e5. Oh, and it just stopped there. Oh my. Well, I spent a lot of time on just 2 puzzles, but I have time for hopefully a few more, depending on how long it takes me. That one was only rated 1827, but it has a really low pass rate, only 20%. which tells me that its rating should probably be higher. Because I run across a lot of puzzles around the 1800 rating range that their pass rate is about 50 or 60%. This one's pass rate's only 24%, so that tells me that its rating should probably be higher. That was hard to find, for me, anyway. All right, let's move on. Okay, I am playing with the white pieces. My opponent has just moved out of check, and it looks like my opponent is getting really close to ladder mating me here, although I might be able to hide in front of my own pawn. Do have follow-up checks. Follow-up check with the knight. 2 follow-up checks with the knight. Okay. If I check down here, the king can just go back to where it was. It can't come here because of my king, and it can't go out to g7 once my knight's moved because of my queen guarding that square. And the same thing would be true if I checked down on g8. What's the difference between those two? Because in either case, pretty sure the opponent would only have 1 legal move. Okay, I think the difference is that on one of them I have a follow-up check. Because if I check here and this king comes forward, I can't check here because my knight's in the way. But if I check on g8, again, the king cannot escape that way because of my queen right now, so it has to move forward. Then I have the follow-up check on f3. King would have to move forward again to h4, and I would have mate. Okay, I think this is a mate in 1, 2, 3. Sorry, my phone just said something. Oh, never mind. It was a completely useless notification that I would have rather not received. Okay. I thought it was somebody important sending me a message. Yeah, that seems to be the main difference between those two checks, is that I do not have the follow-up check with the queen if I put my knight over here on g4. So let's just make sure there's no other legal moves. The king cannot go out. You can't block a knight check in general, ever. So the king only has 1 legal move. What happens when I check here? They can't block with anything because their rook and queen are out of position. The king can't go back because of the knight still guarding h6. Can't come here because of the king still, and my queen, of course, is hitting these. So it would have to come forward, and I think that's mate. Okay. I had to think that through just to be sure, because it's embarrassing to fail these puzzles on video. To be clear, it's embarrassing to fail puzzles anywhere, but on video that I know I'm going to put on YouTube, that's more embarrassing. That one was rated almost 2200, but it has a pass rate of 55%. For me, this was quite a bit easier than the previous one, and it took quite a bit less time. Let's go on to the next one. Oh, this looks like a hard one. Hard for me. It's black to move. All right, they have just forked my rooks and my bishop. Okay, so do I have any checks? I do have a check. I have a check with the pawn, and I have a check with the bishop here on g3. And it's probably worth mentioning that besides those 2 pieces guarding that square, whichever one I took with, the other one would be protecting it, the knight also guards that square. So whichever piece I checked with first, I assume they would take with the pawn, but then the second piece that checks is protected by the knight. But then the king's going to move over, I assume. If, let's say I check with the pawn, they take with the pawn, I take with the bishop, the king is probably going to move over, but then my pawn will be out of the way of my rook. So this would also be a check with my light squared bishop. And then the king would have to go back to the corner. It couldn't go back to g1 because of my knight still. And it couldn't come out here because of my pawn. So it would have to go into the corner. And then when I took with the rook, that would be mate. I mean, when I took the rook with my bishop, that would be mate. I think that's checks all the way down. Now let's go back. They don't have to take with the pawn. They could get out of check right then. But if they did, again, my pawn's out of the way of my rook, so this would be a protected check, and the same rules would apply. They would have to go either here or in the corner, in which case, again, I would take their rook, and I think that would be mate. Did I forget anything? Once that pawn's out of the way, assuming they take with the pawn, that square's open, but that square's would be guarded by my bishop. Okay, I think that's it. I think we have a mate here. Okay, this was our next move because it's a check. Remember, if I don't check, they can take one of my rooks, and then I assume they'll take this one because they would want this one to move over. If they took this one, I'd move this one over, and I would still have a rook pointed down here. But then I might be in trouble because then they would check me, and when I got out of check, they would go get my rook with their rook. So I think I have to be checking the whole time, and I think that's my only check right now. Wait, is that a wasted move? Should I check with the rook first? No, because then they move here and I can't check again, right? I mean, I can, but then they'll take it with their pawn. So I think I have to check right now with the bishop, saving this for when they move over. If I take on h3 with the rook, which is check, and then any check after that loses a piece. This doesn't lose a piece. Okay, they did go there. Now again, this is my protected check. They can't take the bishop because the knight guards it. The knight also guards G1. Bishop guards here. Their own piece is in the way there. My bishop here would be protected by the rook. This square on F3 is protected by my pawn. So that would leave them two choices. And then I believe I would head down there. So let's try that. And like many of the mating net puzzles that we've seen recently, it just stopped. That's pretty frustrating because this one has an incorrect theme, I've already noticed, and I wanted to add the theme mate in something, but we didn't go to mate, so it can't be that theme. I don't know what theme it can be, but it's not passed pawns, which is the theme that's here. So I can't help but be distracted by that. If you do want to practice puzzles with passed pawns, head over to Lichess, go to their puzzles page, puzzles by theme, and I think they have one for passed pawns, or at least endgame tactics, and those themes are much more correct than these. Somebody has gone through here and spammed a bunch of these. If there exists a passed pawn on the board, they'll add passed pawn, and sometimes there might not even be one, and that'll be the theme. Couldn't help but be distracted by that because that's been an ongoing issue here. But another ongoing issue is that when you're getting close to mate, it won't finish. Just out of curiosity, I'm going to go to the analysis board. I'm pretty sure I was a move or two from mate. After they went there, yeah, I had mate in 5. Okay. Mate in 4, mate in 3, mate in 2. They're only... Oh yeah, I said they could go here, but they can't because my bishop guards that square. Their only legal move was to the corner. Oh, and it said I would go here. Really? It says it would be mate in 8 if I took the rook. See, the puzzle should have continued because I would have messed up. If I take the rook, they have 2 pieces guarding this square. They'll block my rook from that check. So it has to be a double check. Yeah, that's another reason that these puzzles shouldn't stop right before mate, especially when there's a situation like this. There's an only move here, and it's this one. And I probably would have missed that. I think I was going to take the rook, and I didn't see this resource right here. They would have to block that. It says I would take it, and they would take back. But I'm not going to follow that line out. I'm going to follow this line out because I need to learn it. I assume they're going to take my bishop, and then I have mate here. Okay. Because again, the pawn guards this, and the knight guards those 2 squares, and the bishop guards my rook. Okay, yeah, yet another reason those puzzles should continue. Even the ones that are just mate in 1. You know, there's 1 move left to mate. They should continue just for the satisfaction of it. Especially when there's only 1 legal move for the opponent and only 1 move to mate for you. I've run into so many like that, but in this case, it should have gone because I would have messed up the next one. Okay, let's move on. I have time for maybe 1 more unless I'm really fast. Oh, I'm not going to be fast on this one. Okay, playing with the black pieces. Wow, how did their king get over here? Is this a made-up puzzle? This can't be a position from an actual game. Who marched their king all the way over here and then planted it in here and got their bishop trapped? Actually, their bishop's not trapped, is it? Yeah, it is. Oh no, it can just go there. Okay. What are they doing with this knight? They've just moved this knight in here to threaten my rook, I guess. Okay. Okay, the thing that struck me about this puzzle at the beginning was the position of their king. Once I got sorted out whose pieces were whose. So that leads me to believe that their king might be trapped. It is a fact that their king cannot capture any of these pieces because they all protect each other. And it can't move here because the pawn's protecting that square. So those squares are off limits to it. My king keeps it from going here. So what if I put my rook over on h8? My first move. I don't have any checks. The only capture I have is this knight, but that doesn't make any sense whatsoever because then they get a passed pawn that I can't stop. Okay, so threats it is. Rook to h8 keeps the king from going to the only 2 squares it has left. Then what do they play? Check me? Guess they could check me? Because remember, my rook's way over here now, so... And I wouldn't want to come back and take it because then they take my rook and I've lost my last piece that can move. My bishop can't move. So I'm going to play rook to h8. I assume they're going to check me because I'm threatening mate here on h6. Once they check me on c8, I can't move left or right because of their bishop. I can't move up there because of their pawns. Also, their king's guarding that square. So I would only have a few choices. 2, 3. Sorry, I would have 3 choices. The F, D, or E. I think the E one would be the worst because then they could take this pawn and check me again. But I don't know which of the other 2 would be better. I'm going to figure that out after I find out whether the rook to h8 is correct. Oh, okay, it was, and they did check me. This will be my last puzzle. I just looked at my time. I'm past my time, so let me finish this. There's only 2 moves that make sense. But that makes me want to reconsider this. I don't want to dismiss it outright. Because what if I dismiss it and it was that? If I go to e8, I assume they're going to take this pawn and check me again. And then I have to go to one of those two squares anyway, probably F8, because if I went to E8 and they checked me and then I went to D8, then they could check me again and win my rook. So if I went here and they checked me, then I would want to go to F8, which tells me I should probably go to F8 first. Okay, so if I go to F8 now, what can they do? I don't think they can do anything. They can't check me again. Their rook is not in a position to check me. It should have been over here somewhere so it could come down, but it's not. That takes 2 moves. I need 1, 2 to mate. So if I go here, they can't check me on the next turn, and I can check them. Don't know what they could possibly do. We're about to find out. Oh, they took that pawn anyway. Wait, did I miss something? That's still mate, right? Because all these 3 pieces protect each other and that square. The rook cuts off this and that. My king hits this. And their pawn's in the way. Okay, this one did go all the way to mate. And I'll just tell you, since it's blocked behind my picture here, that this was rated 1839 and has a pass rate over 55%. It seems like there's not a lot of puzzles rated over 2000 because even though I'm rated over 2000 now and had solved several in a row, it keeps giving me puzzles rated 1800 and something. So maybe they have not very many puzzles rated over 2000. Or maybe the random algorithm that feeds me puzzles thinks I'm not ready for those yet, which very well might be true. Either way, I'm glad I didn't miss any. That would have, again, it's always embarrassing when I miss one, but it's been a while since I did a whole video where I didn't miss any. So I'm glad you got to be here for that. But most of all, thank you for spending your time here. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or any insight for me. We'll see you next time.